that in an ideal world, it will go through these 3 stages. Okay? In many schools in Thailand, you have a situation, especially in private schools, where the real power lies with the students. Okay? Where the students are going to make the teacher's job very difficult, and the teacher is either unwilling or unable to take the power from the students. The other situation is where the teacher has absolute control, and the students just stand there or sit there like drones. Okay? Now, neither of those situations are ideal. What would be best in an ideal world is where this teacher and the students are actually going to share the power. Now that's very difficult in a Thai context, because in a Thai context, the students that's a totally foreign concept to them. In the US, the UK, Australia, you can go into a classroom and you can see the teacher and the students sharing power together, where things are negotiated. But the key thing is, for this to work, they need to have common goals. That means the students and the teachers are both trying to achieve the same thing. In most classrooms in the world, what are the students trying to achieve?
The best looking class. You can have competitions among classes.
In most classrooms, I think the students are trying to get through the hour as painlessly as possible, and trying to do fun stuff, even if it includes interrupting the class. Okay? And what are the goals of most teachers in the world? To try to keep their control of the class. And normally when I ask this question, what makes an ideal environment, the common thing is everything runs smoothly. 2 common answers I hear. Everything runs smoothly, and number 2, there's a good relationship between the students and the teacher. Okay? So we need common goals. And for us to have those common goals, we need to know what our roles are. Everyone needs to know what their roles are. So when we do something like pass paper back to the class, all the students need to know what their role is. When the teacher's talking, the students need to know what they're supposed to do. Sit down, be quiet, pay attention. Okay? And the last thing is rituals. These are procedures. Okay? The students need to be very familiar with the procedures of the class. So these things, this area here, this is a transformational classroom. In a nutshell, a transformational classroom is where teachers and students share power, have common goals, know what their roles are, and have certain procedures, certain rituals. And the concept is the teacher doesn't have to resort to bribes and punishments because the students are trying to achieve something. So they know that it's best if they be quiet when the teacher talks. Okay? They know that it's best to go along and follow the instructions. So the rewards, the motivation is not extrinsic, it becomes intrinsic. And how do you achieve this? Well, let me jump over here. This might be too small. Here is a map. Okay. here are dysfunctional, ineffective classrooms. This is where there is chaos. Okay? There's two types of situations. One is where you have total chaos. The teacher is very easygoing, allows the students to do whatever they want, and the teacher tries to get the students to be his friend. The problem with doing this is that the climate is accidental. That means that the atmosphere of the class is not planned, it just happens by accident. The students, because there is so much chaos, the students, there's no order in the classroom. Commonly there's bullying, and students have to fend for themselves. Okay? The other opposite of this, but also an example of a dysfunctional classroom, is this, where the teacher is the dictator, the dominator. The teacher creates an antagonistic classroom where rewards and punishments are used, and the students are forced to conform or to rebel. Okay? Now the opposite end of the spectrum is this, where we have a highly effective and functional classroom. And I'm going to go and talk to you about how to do that in a minute. Okay? We'll do that right now, in fact. In a highly functional classroom, the classroom climate is intentional. Do your students know how they're supposed to act in the classroom? I'm not asking you if they do it, but do they know? There's a difference. They might know, but not do it. Do they know what they're supposed to do? Do your students know how they're supposed to act in the classroom? Yeah? How do they know? I mean, do they know that they're supposed to be quiet when the teacher talks? Okay, how do they know this?
Like we have body language, like when I look at them in a certain way.
Right. Does it work? No, no. When you use the body language to signal for them to be quiet, does it work? It does work. Okay. Anybody else? Do the students know how they're expected to behave? But they just don't do it. Right, okay. How are you sure that they know how to behave? Right. You set rules, okay? And do you actively do that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's very good. Because quite often, in low functional classes, the teacher does not explicitly say what they want the students to do. Okay? Where is the control? Is the control external, meaning that the students are going to be punished if they don't act the way the teacher wants? Or are the students behaving themselves because they want to achieve the goal? They want to fit in with the group that's also trying to achieve the goal. Is the environment used for efficiency, or is there a lot of struggle in the environment? Is there a lot of power play between the teacher and student, or do the teacher and student work together? Okay? Are the students emotionally discouraged, or are they positively encouraged? Are the students aware of their effect on the class as a whole, or are they unaware of how their behavior affects the class? Okay? So these are the different ways that we can distinguish between a highly functional and dysfunctional classroom. And here are some ideas. This is a big problem, I notice. Probably the single biggest problem. Students are unclear about what exactly they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to act. That tends to be a very big problem. And this has to be backed up like from something you just said, consistency. The teacher must be consistent, okay? It's very easy for the teacher, and I know I do it all the time, to go in and one day make sure everyone follows the rules. The next day you're personally a little bit happier, easier going, and you're not as consistent. You have to be consistent all the time. This is one we'll come back to. Use a pedagogy that supports your management goals. We'll come back to that one. Create a need-satisfying learning environment. This means that the students have to feel that they're part of the group, part of the class. Okay. Here's something I don't see in Thailand. I only see it in international schools. A social contract. A contract where the students agree upon certain types of behavior. Okay. And everyone in the class agrees to it. This is something that's very, very popular in the U.S., but I have only seen it at international schools in Thailand. Practice your management procedures. This is what I talked about, routines, where you actually have to drill them. Promote a psychology of success. Try to build self-esteem. Okay? And you go from a manager telling them what to do to more of a leader, getting them to make the right decisions. Okay? So this is a ladder. If your classroom is highly dysfunctional, you need to focus on these 2 or 3 things. If you're doing pretty well, these are the things that you need to focus on.